Hey everyone, how's it going? If you can believe it, we're almost done the single stage Pokemon in Red and Blue. I believe there's only 1 or 2 left. And of course, in today's video, we're going to be using everyone's favorite vines, tentacles. I'm not really sure what it's supposed to be, but indeed, it is of course Tangela. Before I even start talking about Tangela, you may notice that we are in fact using a different game. The only Generation 1 game I have never played up to this point, and that is Pokemon Green. Now, for the sake of this run, Pokemon Green is functionally identical to Red and Blue. The mechanics, the unintended features, the teams, all the exact same as you know from Red and Blue, but I had never played Pokemon Green before, so I decided, heck, why not, and use that for Tangela. Unfortunately, Tangela is yet another Pokemon I'm not super excited to use. It has some great defense and very good special, so it's going to be quite bulky, but it's rather slow. And that's going to be a bit of an issue, but more to the point, the issue is Tangela's moveset. It doesn't start with very good moves, and it doesn't get a lot of moves in general. Although later on, it may get the right moves to make it a pretty good late game Pokemon, but man, is it going to be annoying in the early game. The only moves we start off with are Constrict, which is one of the worst moves ever, and Bind. It is not a very fun move to use, and we're going to have to use it to defeat Brock. But first, we need to thank today's sponsor, ZenMarket. Now recently, I've been trying to collect every single Pokemon game that's ever been released, but I encountered some problems as certain Pokemon games were only released in Japan, and I could not find a way to purchase them from North America. Well, if you're in my position, do not worry, ZenMarket offers a very ingenious solution. Available in 19 languages, you can search dozens of Japanese stores and purchase almost anything you want. From Pokemon Green, to the original Pokemon Stadium, never released here, to the sequel to the amazing Pokemon trading card game video game, all of which can be searched on the many stores integrated with ZenMarket. But even if you don't see a store in the search bar, that's not a problem if you paste the URL into ZenMarket, which opens up the possibility of buying awesome Kadabra plushies that I can't find in Canada. Right now, until March 15th, if you sign up for ZenMarket for your first parcel, if you use the code OMOTENASHI2401, you'll get 15% off international shipping for your first parcel. Registering to ZenMarket is free, and if you use my promo code JROSE11, you'll get a bonus 750 ZenPoints, which take 750 yen off your first international shipping. Honestly, I speak from experience when I can say buying from Japan can often be a massive headache for international purchasers, so if you're interested in ZenMarket, please check it out. But now let's get back to our video. Alright, so if you want to defeat Brock with Tangela, the only conceivable way to do so is by using Bind and knocking out both his Pokemon. But Bind only has 20 power points, and it's very variable. It has a slightly more than 1 in 4 chance of missing, and if it does hit, it can last between 2 to 5 turns, but not all those probabilities are equal. There's a 37.5% chance that it lasts 2 turns, an additional 37.5% chance it lasts 3 turns. In other words, there's a 75% chance that if it hits, it lasts 3 turns or less, and only a 25% chance it lasts 4 turns or more, with a 12.5% chance each for 4 or 5. Considering we only have 20 power points, which effectively is more like 15 power points because statistically 5 are going to miss, it's really difficult to knock out Brock's Pokemon before you run out of power points. And if you run out of power points, Brock's Pokemon can start attacking you. The most notable attack is Bide. One thing I want to make very clear that did make this challenge a little bit more challenging is that I couldn't really understand what was going on. You see, not only do I not know any Japanese, but because the characters are completely different, I can't really distinguish the various symbols, and so trying to recognize when something is Bide or Screech or Tackle without the visual cue of seeing my HP drop, it's really hard for me. And sometimes I can kind of tell because of what else happened, what move was used, but other times I'm just going too quickly and I have no idea. So it made an already really annoying, tedious battle just a little bit more tedious, but not actually more difficult per se, because there's really not much I could do differently than just use bind and hope. It took me over 30 minutes, the amount of time it took Mewtwo to defeat all 8 gyms, just to defeat Brock. I obviously could have leveled up more, but it wouldn't have made much of a difference because a base 15 power normal move, it's going to take a very long time before it starts doing 2 HP of damage per attack as opposed to 1, and so it really is just luck at the end of the day, and just a whole lot of resetting. Not very fun. But unfortunately, this strategy, or whatever you want to call it, is going to have to continue for the foreseeable future because the next viable move Tangela gets is Body Slam, and there's still at least one major battle, Rival 2, that we have to complete first, and possibly also Misty. The battles with Rival 2, unfortunately, are kind of just like the battles with Brock with one extra wrinkle. We really don't want to see Sand Attack. But knowing whether Sand Attack actually hit or whether Pidgeot used Sand Attack, it wasn't always completely obvious. I'm just mashing the button because with Bind, you don't really do anything. If you don't know, the way Bind works is that your opponent actually can't attack you while it is being used. So if you outspeed, Bind is a really cheap, almost insta-win move. And a lot of you have asked me why don't I just use it more often, and this video is the perfect example. There are 2 Achilles heels to moves like Wrap and Bind. Actually, there are 3 now that I think about it. The first is the accuracy. It can miss a bunch. The second is the speed. If you don't outspeed, well, they can attack sometimes. And the final is the speed of gameplay. It takes a really long time, and considering we are trying to go fast, if we can use anything that is quicker, we should. If we need to use Bind or Wrap or whatever to beat a gym, so be it, but it should be a last resort because of how long it takes, and oh boy does it take a long time. But that's what we needed to use in order to defeat Rival 2. Although, there were times if a Pokemon was close to fainting, I would use Constrict just to conserve power points, because Constrict is also very low base power, and we're gonna have to heal several times, not just after this battle, but pretty much after every second or third battle on Nugget Bridge. Unfortunately, Tangela ended up being one of the more tedious early games I've had in a long time, which is probably a big reason I've avoided it for so long. But we're almost out of the woods. We don't have to defeat Misty right now, and in fact, I had tried to battle her earlier with no success, but now that we've leveled up after Nugget Bridge, it is possible to defeat Misty. The most annoying thing here is that Misty can use an X defend while Bind is going on. And that's definitely frustrating, but like, Bind is really cheap, so I guess it makes sense. I mean, I guess we'll allow Misty to do something, but again, the strategy is just the same thing. We're no longer outspeeding, so we are going to get attacked, but we need to be at a high enough level. Misty has good AI, so she won't use her probably better water moves. She's going to have to resort to Tackle with my very massive base defense. So as long as I have enough HP and don't take too much damage, Misty is beatable, and that's great, because now that we've defeated Misty, we can go on the SS Anne, and finally we get a much quicker move, Body Slam. In fact, we're really close to getting Absorb, which while not powerful, will speed things up immensely, especially against rock Pokemon, which are going to come up in Rock Tunnel. Before that though, we have 2 battles, Rival 3 and Lieutenant Surge. Rival 3 was a little annoying. Pidgeotto could use Sand Attack, and while that does boost my attack at this point by a little bit, it also causes me to miss, and we really don't want to waste our power points. In addition, Charmeleon can potentially burn you, and that happened to me a couple times. But eventually, we got a battle with the requisite luck, and we were able to defeat Rival 3 no problem. Yes, Charmeleon does have powerful Ember, that's a weird thing to say, but we are pretty high leveled, and our attack isn't actually that bad. So Rival 3 didn't prove to be that difficult, but still did take multiple attempts. We've yet to have a major battle that we did on one try, but Lieutenant Surge does seem like a great candidate, considering his electric moves are resisted by Tangela. But something that we never talk about, but I kind of need to talk about, because I was stunned by this. From the perspective of a solo run, like I said at the beginning, red and green versus red and blue, in most cases, they're interchangeable. One area that's not interchangeable is Lieutenant Surge's gym. I believe I've shown this picture before, but this is a picture that illustrates how Surge's quote-unquote puzzle works. Only half the trash cans, approximately, can have the first can, and depending on what the first can is, it's supposed to only be in usually one location. Unfortunately, due to a bug, it can always be in the top left corner, but if you save after you found the first can, you can just try the can it's supposed to be and the top left, and you have a 50-50 chance of getting it. So it really doesn't take that long. I never noticed it anymore. Until now, I went to where the second can I thought was supposed to be. I went to the top left, couldn't find the second trash can. It was actually the second can from the left. I don't know if the pattern's just different or can be anywhere, but yeah, Surge's puzzle, different in red and green. Great. But one thing that isn't different in red and green is how easy Lieutenant Surge is. Voltorb actually is his scariest Pokemon because Voltorb has Sonic Boom, and that deals 20 damage just right away. I need to conserve power points, so I use Bind. Unfortunately, that was a bad call, and I got hit with a second Sonic Boom. But in the end, it turned out not to matter. It was truly bizarre seeing a Pokemon attack with a number in it. Apparently, Thunderbolt is 100,000 volts in Japanese, so you see that 10 there. That was definitely something I wasn't expecting, but it wasn't enough to defeat me, and we have 3 gym badges down. And very, very soon, we will have Absorb. Soon enough that the famous hiker in Rock Tunnel didn't end up being a problem, and so by the time we got to Celadon, I was definitely starting to feel a little bit better about this run. It had started going a little bit quicker. But we had to make a decision where we wanted to go next. It would be nice to get Mega Drain from Erica, but I opted instead to gain a little bit more experience points because I did think Erica's Victory Bell with Wrap and Poison Powder, that can be really tough for slower Pokemon, so I need a little bit more speed, so let's go and beat Giovanni, and Giovanni was fairly trivial, because even though Absorb is only base 20 power, with our good special, with the double weakness his 2 Pokemon have, although we still have to rely on Body Slam a fair bit, we did accomplish our main objective of gaining a lot of experience points, and thus I felt ready to challenge Erica. The big thing here was, do I outspeed Victory Bell? And the answer was yes. This means Victory Bell can't just infinitely trap me with Wrap and Poison Powder, and I knew at this point the battle would be fairly easy. None of Erica's Pokemon, despite the fact 2 of them are Poison type, have Poison type moves, so we've gone from not having any first try victories to 3 consecutive first try victories in major battles. Not bad, and I feel a 4th one is on the way, because we are going to get Mega Drain, and we're going to battle probably, other than Giovanni 1, the easiest major battle of the entire run, Rival 4. Not even going to really go over. You can just use either Mega Drain or Body Slam, whatever you really want. There's not much of a challenge here. In fact, the bigger challenge in the Pokemon Tower were the Ghastly, because the only move that Tangela has to hit it, or at least the only attacking move right now, is Mega Drain, which is not very effective and base 40 power. So that was a little irritating, but not too much of a problem. And now that we've gotten through this section of the game, Tangela starts to get access to very, very good moves, and the whole run is going to start to shift from Tangela being kind of slow, not really having a lot of options, to having some of the best options Generation 1 can offer. First things first though, we need to make a detour into Silph Company. We need to go to the 7th floor and get TM3, Swords Dance. This will raise our attack sharply and will really help us with the next couple battles, because Rival Fivel and Koga are both a little challenging. Charizard, Poison Pokemon, those are good matchups against Tangela, in theory. In practice, and by the way, I should battle Koga first for a reason we'll talk about in just a second. In practice, it didn't end up being that bad. I mean, I tried using just one Swords Dance and then trying to gain some health back with Mega Drain. That didn't prove to be the best idea, and you may notice I just taught a move. That move was Sleep Powder. probably wouldn't have been the worst idea to use that on Pidgeot and gain a little bit more experience points to make the battle easier. But Execute stays asleep long enough, we're almost at full health, we have max attack, but the thing is we don't have maximum speed. And thus, while we get really close to first try victorying Rival Fivel, we just fall a little bit short. Had I battled Koga first, I would have been gaining speed every time I used Swords Dance, assuming I didn't level up, and that would have made the fight a complete joke. But as it would turn out, we didn't actually need to abuse what's known as the badge boost glitch in order to beat Rival Fivel. It turns out having Sleep Powder in the beginning and one more level was all we needed to defeat him, and that means we're going to have a very easy time with Giovanni 2. In fact, I don't even really want to talk about that battle. The next most important battle is Koga. Now, this is always going to be someone's first video, so in Generation 1 only, when your stats are altered, depending on which badges you have, you'll get an unintended boost in a bunch of stats. Right now, we only have attack and defense. To get speed, we need to beat Koga, which, funny enough, is a programming error in and of itself. Surge is supposed to give you speed, that's why the text when you defeat Surge says that, and Koga is supposed to give you defense, but they messed it up somehow. The most difficult thing about Koga is that his final Pokemon, Weezing, likes to use self-destruct. Of course, I should have put Coughing to sleep while I set up Swords Dance. I wouldn't be poisoned and I'd have a lot more HP, but I still won nonetheless. Because I am fast enough, and although Weezing could have defeated me, I think it missed with Smog. So a little bit lucky that we won that battle, but it didn't need to be lucky. We easily could have put both the first Coughing and Weezing to sleep, and thus we wouldn't have to worry about being knocked out, but I played it aggressive and it paid off. First try victory. Of course, our reward for beating Koga is Sabrina, which, I mean, Psychic Pokemon are pretty good, or Blaine, which is a Fire-type gym leader, and that's really bad for Tangela. So obviously we're going to battle Sabrina, making this one of the few videos we're going to be going completely in intended order, at least in terms of gym leaders. Well, since we did already beat Koga, Sabrina's actually going to be a joke, and this is why I allow using the badge boost glitch. There's so little I can do about this. The best strategy would simply be to use a bunch of Swords Dances and then use Body Slam. Unfortunately, Kadabra disabled it, but fortunately, it got enabled quick enough. But that would just be the best strategy. They have high special, low defense, so just use Body Slam and power it up so they one-shot. That makes sense. I would do that in any generation, but in this generation, that means I'm going to also outspeed them. There's nothing I can do about it, and although people have asked me on occasion to try and avoid using the badge boost glitch, that would require having some subjective criteria of whether I needed that third Swords Dance, or whether I just wanted it for speed. I mean, give me a break. At the end of the day, it's how the games work. If you don't want to see badge boost glitch, we do runs in other generations where it's not possible. I mean, let's be real. Both Poliwag and Ghastly have beaten this game in under 5 hours around level 60. I mean, come on. There's no way that's what Game Freak intended. So at the end of the day, that's part of why we're using Red and Blue. Of course we're going to win, unless you're Weedle, Caterpie, Metapod, Kakuna, or Magikarp. But the fun is in how quickly we can do it, what's going to be challenging, and that's actually a good segue, because what's going to be challenging, well, I would assume Blaine would be pretty challenging, considering he's the, you know, Fire-type gym leader. But yeah, fun fact, he's not. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like I couldn't lose in this battle, but all you need to do is put Growlithe to sleep, set up 3 Swords Dance, and now Body Slam, it's not one-shotting, but I think that's just because I got a critical hit. Now I do level up, and that level up means that I will no longer have the glitchy effects. And because I want those extra speed boosts, I kinda need them to make this battle as easy as I want it to be, I just reset and battled another trainer in the gym, and that way I don't level up in the middle of the battle, and so when I battle Blaine again, I do mess up a little bit trying to put Rapidash to sleep. This unfortunately is another instance of me missing a Japanese text box where I'd gotten a critical hit. In Generation 1, another weird thing is critical hits ignore your boosts. So it just does the standard 2 times damage instead of 4 times for the 4 Swords Dance. So it doesn't stack on top of it the way it would in modern Pokemon and deal a whopping 6 or 8 times depending on the generation you're playing. Arcanine wasn't a one-shot, so I did put it to sleep for safety. And I think you're really starting to see what I was talking about at the beginning of the video, that in the late game, Tangela gets phenomenal moves. The best moves in Generation 1, especially because of Badge Boost Glitch, are moves that buff your attack or special, and Tangela gets both, plus it gets Sleep Powder to be able to set up and just sweep through entire teams. And that's exactly what we're not going to do for Giovanni. We don't even need to put anything to sleep. In fact, we really don't even need to set up much. I mean, I guess I should have set up for Nidoqueen. That might have been smart. One thing I also want to talk about that I haven't mentioned yet is that the sprites in red and green are interesting. Some of them are better than the ones we'd end up getting, so a little bit of a history lesson here. When Red and Green came out, they were obviously the first Pokemon games ever made. You can go on Bulbapedia and find the original artwork Ken Sugimori did for each Pokemon, and it was up to the job of somebody, I'm not sure if it was Sugimori himself or some programmer, to turn those drawings into 8-bit designs. Some of them look pretty good. Some of them, like Nidoqueen, look a lot less good. Now, the reason that they're called Red and Blue here and not Red and Green is because of the sprites and other game-breaking bugs you could encounter, such as if you evolve your Pokemon before you get the Pokedex, you just won't get it from Oak. That's a fun one. Game Freak decided to release a third version, and while the encounter tables and version exclusives are taken from Red and Green, the fixes and new sprites were taken from Pokemon Blue. So that's a little interesting history lesson for you. And continuing on the topic of interesting, these are the most interesting battles, Rival 6 and the Elite Four plus Champion. Let's go. So Rival 6 leads with Pidgeot, and my strategy is pretty simple. It's pretty much what I've done the whole time. However, there's going to be a change coming very shortly. After we knock out a few Pokemon, we are eventually going to level up. And once we do, we're going to have a choice. We can keep Swords Dance, which buffs our physical attack by 2, and we can take advantage of Body Slam, which is base 85 power, but we have way worse base attack, or we could use Growth instead. And I opt, after thinking about it, to use Growth. Growth is better. It only raises it by 1 stage, but that means more badge boosts. But more importantly, looking at the Elite Four, Mega Drain is going to be a much more important move than Body Slam. Unfortunately, we do end up losing this battle to Rival 6 because of an unlucky burn. That's now happened in a couple of these rival fights, but that would be the last time we lose to Rival 6, and hopefully the last time we lose to the rival, period. Tangela has absolutely breezed through this final section of the game, but of course, and you guys know this, that doesn't mean it's going to breeze through the Elite Four. It has some interesting matchups against some of the Elite Four trainers. Lorelie has ice, but also water. Bruno is fighting, but also rock. Agatha, it's going to be resisted, but we can put it to sleep. Lance, kind of a weird matchup. And then the champion, we had a pretty good time against Rival 6, but Rival 7, or the champ, is different. Only one way to find out how this is going to go. Well, in my first battle versus Lorelie, we have to recognize that Sleep Powder has a 1 in 4 chance of missing. And when it does, it really puts a damper on this whole thing. So we're gonna need a little bit of good luck, but nothing crazy. Our strategy is simple. Put it to sleep and use Growth. They can't attack the turn they wake up. I'm gonna put it to sleep anyway, and then just keep using Mega Drain. Unless we crit, which is what we do against Cloyster, we should one-shot everything. Jinx is a bit of a question mark. Its special is pretty good. Unfortunately, Jinx does outspeed us, but doesn't freeze us, which is pretty nice. Since we've leveled up in the middle, we're not going to outspeed it either, but we're able to make it past Lorelie no problem. The next battle is going to be Bruno. This is going to be fairly simple. We could set up Growth, or we could just knock out the Onix and play super risky. Now, I was always confused about people talking about Hitmonchan's sprite because it wasn't the sprite I recognized, and that's because this is the famous meme sprite. And speaking of meme sprites, I mean, Hitmonlee looks cross-eyed. I'm not sure what the heck was happening there. Onix looks fine. I actually think Onix looks better. But oh my god, what's that goofy smile on Machamp's face? It just looks so goofy. Anyway, didn't put up much resistance, so we're going to move on to Probably what's going to end up being the most difficult battle other than champion. Another really difficult thing, by the way, guys, is remembering which items are which. Thankfully, I remembered the order which they were in and the quantities of each. But yeah, another very interesting challenge or sub-challenge. Remembering what an elixir is, what a potion is. Because they all just, I can't read any of it. Anyway, Gengar doesn't look too great. I guess I'm mostly doing sprite commentary, but it is pretty good against me. It puts me to sleep, confuses me, Dream Eaters me, but we fight back. We put it to sleep, we start using growth, and after a couple, I think, we outspeed the Gengar. Once it wakes up, we are going to be able, yes, we put it back to sleep, which is important. We're going to be able to restore a lot of our health, and that's pretty important. It wakes up again after I misclick, but no harm, no foul. Now for Golbat, I'm going to put it to sleep because it can use Haze, and that would be brutal, and I use a couple body slams to knock it out. Haunter, I figure that putting it to sleep would be riskier than just using 2 Mega Drains, so that's what I do. Arbok, I don't know what I was doing here. I really shouldn't have used Mega Drain at all, because now I needed 2 high rolls to beat Gengar, and I get confused and almost knocked out. Thankfully, it went for Dream Eater, I think, on its final attack, and we win. But I also could have run out of Mega Drains and would have had no way of damaging Gengar. So that was played pretty poorly, and the luck was honestly kind of mediocre. It started out great for Agatha, great for me, and then great for me. So a bit of a luck sandwich, if you will. But we've made it to Lance for the very first time. Lance lead with Gyarados, and once again, this is going to shock you. Put it to sleep, use growth. Once it wakes up, put it to sleep again. And yeah, that's the strat. It sucks, but it's just so optimal to do it this way. The biggest unfortunate thing is that we don't get something like Giga Drain. Really, there aren't great grass moves to take advantage, and leveling up here really does suck, because although the Dragonair sprites look terrible, they don't get one shot, so they could theoretically crit with Hyper Beam or something, and I don't know, that could do damage, although my defense is pretty good. Aerodactyl sprite looks amazing. Unfortunately, we knock it out. Dragonite sprite looks very serpent-like. Doesn't look correct at all. And unfortunately, because it double resists, we have to rely on either Body Slam, which does almost nothing since we've leveled up, or Mega Drain, which does almost nothing because it double resists. And in the end, we are able to knock it out and make it to the champion for the very first time. We have Mimic in our inventory, but I haven't used it yet. I'm trying to use my Elixir, end up almost using an Ether. I double check I actually used an Elixir just to make extra sure, and then I battle the champion for the first time. The champ leads with Pidgeot, and it goes for Sky Attack, and we put it to sleep. Battle animations are going to make this a heck of a lot easier. Stays asleep, I go for growth. Now I outspeed, stays asleep. Go for growth, stays asleep. 4th growth, stays asleep. 5th growth, stays asleep. 6th growth, it stays asleep, and that means I can use Body Slam and knock it out. I level up here, so no speed boost, but that's okay. Alakazam goes for Psybeam, but don't forget, growth boosts my special defense, which isn't a thing. And so Alakazam doesn't do very much, unless it gets a crit, which it doesn't, and we knock it out. Next comes out Rhydon, we're going to outspeed and Mega Drain, knock it out. Next comes Exeggutor, I'm going to put this to sleep because it can be really trolly. I go for Mega Drain, and it wakes up. Thankfully, whatever it was going to use, it misses. Probably was going to use Hypnosis, and we knock out Exeggutor. Next comes out Gyarados. We don't one-shot. It goes for Hyper Beam. Does quite a lot. I try to put it to sleep, trying to bait a full restore here to gain a little bit more health, but alas, no dice, and we've made it to the final Pokemon. Charizard goes for Fire Spin, and my own strategy being used against me. Fire Spin is Fire-type Wrap. It's not doing very much, but if it keeps going for it, I'm doomed. Thankfully, it goes for Fire Blast. We're able to put it to sleep. I go for Body Slam, then I go for Mega Drain, and even though it double resists, Charizard stays asleep, and after 4 turns, on our first try through most of these battles, we have defeated the Elite Four. Unfortunately for Tangela, this late surge came a little too late. The early game and mid game were just so brutal for it. It almost has a 6-hour time and a fairly high level at level 65. Therefore, I have no choice but to put it in the second lowest tier for fully evolved Pokemon, just above Chansey. Which would mean, as of now, amongst fully evolved Pokemon, Tangela would rank 4th worst. Will that be Tangela's final ranking, or will other fully evolved Pokemon fare even worse? Only one way to find out. Stay tuned for the next episode of Jero's Ball Z. Take care, everyone.